Hi, welcome. I hope you had a good week and found some moments to just breathe. As the last person in the Western world to discover the marvelous Mrs. Maisel on TV, I was surprised when, in the course of one of the episodes, Midge's mother uncharacteristically tells Midge to stay in the moment. This would be a good time to breathe and stay in the moment, Miriam, she said. Miriam, or Midge, as she's known more to her friends, looks at her mother as if she has gone quite mad. And I thought, how 21st century of a 1950s character. In fact, mindfulness meditation with concentrated breathing has been around for centuries. But it seems that it has only been in recent years that it has entered the mainstream of Jewish life and practice. In gratitude for that entrance into the mainstream, let us spend a few moments just breathing. So I won't go through every inventorial I'm making up, every place that we normally inventory in our within and without. Within, probably even more importantly than without. But let us just take our postures, perhaps soften our gaze or close our eyes, and let us mentally just go from top to bottom and try to release those places that it's not even so much that they get tense, of course, and they take our stress, but more and more I think we just hold on to things, hold on to our insides almost for dear life, afraid that if we let go, somehow we will be unanchored and at risk and adrift. At any rate, let us take a moment to do that. And having softened the insides of our bodies, as well as released the outsides, let us take that first breath and take it deeply and fully and with pleasure and with curiosity as to where it's going to go today, what new corner our breath is going to discover. Sometimes it's helpful to do a count of inhaling, even a count of holding for 4 seconds, for 5 seconds, for 8 seconds, however quickly or comfortably your counting goes. And then sometimes just to release it all at once, and sometimes to release it again to a count. For some people, that helps to concentrate our thoughts just on the breathing, the counting in, the holding, the releasing, the look inside again to see how it feels after that very lovely pause to breathe. And then to wait even a half second longer than comfortable. So that the intake is very strong and clear to us. We might inhale again to a count of 5, maybe. A hold of 5. and a release of the same. If your thoughts begin to wander, as they will, try to let them go. Just say hi and bye. Try not to become ingrained, engrossed in wherever the thoughts might want to take you. They will return. And if they don't, that's okay too. There will be other thoughts along the way. But for now, let's just be right here in this moment, breathing. Filling up our bodies, energizing them, refreshing them, and then letting go. I had occasion this week to speak to a person who described himself as cynical, and then asked if I was. I responded that I am not, but it was a particularly interesting exchange because I have been thinking about hope since our time together last week. In fact, within hours of concluding the meditation last week, I came across Rabbi Jonathan Sacks's more extensive treatment of the subject of hope, from which I quoted him in an article entitled, "How the Jewish People Invented Hope." I recognize that is a rather grand pronouncement, but it occurs to me, even before quoting Rabbi Sacks, that Judaism is the only faith that does not take refuge in the hereafter to cure our grief and our despair. Jews have faced the cruelest, most depraved, most horrific circumstances any population has faced in the history of the world, and for most of the history of the world. And yet, we have not given up, and we have not given in to despair or bitterness or pessimism. Somehow, we continue to believe that there is a better day ahead, and that it is in our power to hasten that day's arrival. That vision is fueled by hope. At the risk of being redundant, I would love to share with you more of Rabbi Sacks's thinking on the topic, as I find it arrestingly insightful and brilliantly inspirational. So here goes. One of the most formative moments in the history of Judaism came in the encounter between Moses and God in the burning bush. Moses asks God what name he should use when people ask him who God is. God replies enigmatically in a phrase that occurs nowhere else in the Bible. Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. Non-Jewish translations read this to mean, I am what, or who, or that I am. I am that I am. I am what I am. Some render it, I am, that is who I am, or I am the one who is. These are deeply significant mistranslations. The phrase means literally, I will be what I will be. Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. Or more fundamentally, God's name belongs to the future tense. God's call is to that which is not yet. If we fail to understand this, we will miss the very thing that makes Judaism unique. Consider the structure of biblical narrative. In literature, there are many kinds of narrative, but they all have one thing in common, what Frank Kermode called the sense of an ending. They reach closure. Some end with, they all lived happily ever after. We call these fairy tales or fantasies. Others end in death and defeat. We call them tragedies. There are other types, but they all have a beginning and an end. That's what makes them stories. Now consider Genesis. The Jewish story begins with God's call to Abraham to leave his land, his birthplace, and his father's house, to travel to the land that I will show you. Seven times God promises Abraham the land, yet he has to haggle with the Hittites to buy one small plot in which to bury Sarah. Jacob and his family are forced into exile in Egypt. Genesis ends with the promise unfulfilled. Then Exodus begins. God calls Moses to lead the Israelites back to freedom and the promised land. Now we feel the story is about to reach closure, but it doesn't come. Instead, a journey that should have taken days lasts 40 years. In the final scene of Deuteronomy, we see Moses, still on the far side of the Jordan, granted only a distant vision of the land. Again, the natural ending is deferred. The Bible as a whole ends in the book of 2 Chronicles, chapter 36, with the Israelites in exile again, this time in Babylonia, and Cyrus giving them permission to return. We are almost back where we began, in the same region from which Abraham and his family first set out. I know of no other stories that have the same form, namely, a beginning, but no end. We would not think of them as stories at all, were it not that we know the ending. It has been there since the beginning. God's three promises to Abraham of children, a land, and an influence on humanity, such that through you all the families of the earth will be blessed. So there is an ending, but it is always beyond the visible horizon. The Jewish story ends as Moses' life ended, with a glimpse of the land not yet reached, a future not yet realized. The same is true of Jewish belief. Judaism is the only civilization whose golden age is in the future, the Messianic age, the age of peace, when nation will not lift up sword against nation, and the Lord shall be one, and God's name one. This ultimately was the dividing line between Judaism and Christianity. To be a Jew is to reply to the question, has the Messiah come, with the words, not yet. In the fine phrase of Harold Fish, the Jewish narrative is the unappeased memory of a future still to be fulfilled. The unappeased memory of a future still to be fulfilled. Why? What does this tell us about Judaism? At the heart of our faith is a belief so fundamental to Western civilization that we take it for granted. Yet it is anything but self-evident. It has been challenged many times, rarely more so than today. It is the belief in human freedom. We are what we choose to be. Society is what we choose to make it. The future is open. There is nothing inevitable in the affairs of humankind. The ancients believed that human destiny lay in the stars, or blind fate, what the Greeks called ananke. Spinoza argued that our lives are governed by natural necessity. Marx claimed that history was determined by economic interests. Freud held that Freud held that human behavior was shaped by unconscious drives. Neo-Darwinians argue that we are governed by genetic codes hardwired into our brains. Freedom, in all these theories, is an illusion. This view is challenged in the opening chapters of the Bible. For the first time, God is seen as beyond nature, creating nature by a free, uncoerced act of will. By creating human beings in God's image, God bestowed something of that freedom on us. Alone among created life forms, we too are capable of being creative. Biblical narrative is the ongoing drama of human freedom. The first four narratives are tragic. First Adam and Eve, then Cain abused their freedom. That is then repeated on a global scale by the generation of the flood and the builders of Babel. People use their freedom to transgress boundaries or deprive others of their freedom, so a new beginning becomes necessary. Abraham is told to leave all the things that constrain freedom, our land, our birthplace, and parents' home, and begin a new kind of life in covenant with God. Genesis is about that covenant as it affects individuals and families. The rest of Tanakh, the rest of the Bible, is about the covenant as it applies to the life of a nation. The Jewish story, still unfinished, is about the journey from multiple forms of slavery to what Levinas called difficult freedom. Torah is the template of responsible freedom, our constitution of liberty. The Torah is our constitution of liberty. Freedom, implies Genesis, is intimately related to language. God creates the world with words, and God's first gift to humanity is the gift of speech. We know that other life forms, primates, dolphins, even bees, have rudimentary forms of language. But there is one form unique to human beings. The Torah signals this by making it the first word God speaks. Yehi, let there be. Yehi or, let there be light. Human beings are the only life form capable of using the future tense. Only beings who can imagine the world other than it is are capable of freedom. And if we are free, the future is open, dependent on us. We can know the beginning of our story, but not the end. That is why, as God is about to take the Israelites from slavery to freedom, God tells Moses that God's name is, I will be what I will be. Judaism, the religion of freedom, is faith in the future tense. Western civilization is the product of two cultures, ancient Greece and ancient Israel. The Greeks believed in fate. The future is determined by the past. Jews believed in freedom. There is no evil decree that cannot be averted. The Greeks gave the world the concept of tragedy. The Jews gave it the idea of hope. The whole of Judaism, though it would take a book to show it, is a set of laws and narratives designed to create in people, families, communities, and a nation habits that defeat despair. Judaism is the voice of hope in the conversation of humankind. It is no accident that so many Jews are economists fighting poverty, or doctors fighting disease, or lawyers fighting injustice, in all cases refusing to see these things as inevitable. It is no accident that after the Holocaust, Jews did not call it al-Nakba, nursing resentment and revenge, but instead turned to the future, building a nation whose national anthem is Hatikva, the hope. It is no accident that Judaism has been opposed by every empire that sought to deny people the freedom to be equal but different. It is no accident that Israel is still today the only free society in the Middle East. Judaism is a religion of details, but we miss the point if we do not sometimes step back and see the larger picture. To be a Jew is to be an agent of hope in a world serially threatened by despair. Every ritual, every mitzvah, every syllable of the Jewish story, every element of Jewish law is a protest against escapism, resignation, or the blind acceptance of fate. Judaism is a sustained struggle, the greatest ever known, against the world that is, in the name of the world that could be, should be, but is not yet. There is no more challenging vocation. Throughout history, when human beings have sought hope, they have found it in the Jewish story. So, let us breathe in that hope. And contradictory enough as it is, we breathe in a hope for the future even while we are concentrating in this moment, which is the purpose of this break to breathe. It strikes me that it is both a paradox and makes all the sense in the world that first Jews whose God is future tense have to learn how to be present in this moment. And because our thoughts are so future oriented, it makes sense that we would have to learn how to be focused in this moment. Actually, that's where all ritual happens, is in the moment in which it is happening. And ritual is designed to uplift our lives, to deepen them, to enrich them, to bring meaning to them. Those are the details to which Rabbi Sachs referred, the details of Judaism. To be rooted in this moment of enhancing our lives, even while our vision is on a future that we can see, we can touch it, we can almost taste it, even while we know it's not here yet. Let us breathe in this moment. this moment of hope, of strength, of resilience. By way of conclusion, and as a frame for the days ahead, I share with you Emily Dickinson's beloved poem, Hope is the Thing with Feathers. And that's how it begins. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. I wish you a hopeful week. I wish you days, hours, minutes filled with that sense of possibility. And I wish you also time rooted right now, in this moment, the only time we ever have or ever will have, this moment. Please stay healthy. Be safe. See you next time. God bless.